Hey everyone, it is Monday, September 16th, and I hope you're doing well. Looking forward to hanging out with you all tonight. It's going to be a good time. I'm really excited about that and getting ready for that. But here to right now to talk about week 3 of Genesis. Genesis, the end of Genesis chapter 1 into Genesis 2. One of the things that I haven't talked about, I haven't been able to hear Caleb's sermon from yesterday yet, but I know one of the things I haven't talked about is the difference between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 and 3 specifically. And I tend to agree with Tim Keller, who says that Genesis 1 is this exalted prose narrative. So it is narrative, there's a plot that's kind of moving along, but there's also tons of poetic language and structure and stuff like that. And so we can read into some of those things. But Genesis 2 and 3 are prose, it's narrative, we are meant to take it literally. And so kind of what you see happening here is the writer of Genesis in Genesis 1 is giving this beautiful poetic narrative of creation and what's going on. It's this big overarching picture. And then we zero in and zoom in Genesis 2, specifically on the creation of man and woman. So that's what we have here. We are spending the next 2 weeks on this idea of this question, who am I? So we're looking at humans created in the image of God for specific purposes. And so a few things, obviously there's a lot to dig around in there. What I would say is this week we're focusing more on what does that mean to be the image of God, created in the image of God, and what is our purpose, what is our value? And then next week is going to be more the relational side of things and our identity and stuff like that. So, what is this image of God speaking of? Certainly, it's speaking of the quality of human beings that we have dignity, that we are valuable. In ancient times, it was just kings and emperors who were said to bear the image of God, not everybody else. But Genesis comes along and counteracts that narrative and says, no, every human being is created in the image of God, bears the God image, man and woman. And so instantly there in this one sentence, you have a really, really profound statement about dignity, about value and quality of human life. And in that, then there is this idea too that we are to, as human beings, we have a job to do in this world. And so God puts them, Adam and Eve, in the garden to work the garden. He has a commission for them to be fruitful and multiply, to go out and subdue the earth. So there's this really great responsibility that he gives them that we as humans have. And so one of the wonderful things we have with Genesis is we can kind of go back and look and go, all right, what was God's intent for humanity from the beginning before the fall? Because this is a really important question for us to ask. What is it like to be human? What is it like to truly be human? And Genesis answers a lot of that. And then looks ahead to Jesus, who answers even more of that, which we'll get to in just a minute. But what is it like to truly be human? We can look at Genesis and go, okay, we've sort of defined humanity, and we do this even in the church, like, humans are sinners, we're destined towards death, we're confined to space and time and all these things, and all those things aren't wrong necessarily. But when you look at Genesis and what God intended for humans, we see a much different story. And then Jesus comes along, and it says in several places that he is the image of the invisible God. So now you have humans who have fallen away from their capacity, their desire to really truly be God's representatives, the image of God in this world. And now you have Jesus coming along, and he does it perfectly. So we have this really, really profound person, Jesus Christ, who is fully God, fully man. So in him we see the image of the invisible God, but also in him we see the image of what humans were truly meant to be way back from creation. And so God enters, he becomes incarnate in this amazing way and in an impossible way, and he puts on flesh, and he shows us not just what God is like, but he shows us what humans are supposed to be like. And so we look to Jesus in the answer to that question as well. What does it truly mean to be human? And so we now, as redeemed followers of Christ, we're redeeming that concept of image bearers of God. Everybody else around us bears the image, but we now are stepping into a renewed understanding, and we're really in many ways getting back to, okay, what does it mean to go out and be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth, and to be obedient and diligent to God's will for our lives as we walk with Christ and following Christ. So a lot here, a lot of things to focus discussion around. What does it mean to be image bearers? Do you feel like you're an image bearer? At the very core of who we are, what is our responsibility to people around us? How do we treat everyone around us with dignity as people who bear the image of God? How does that view of the people around us, whoever that is, change the way we see them and treat them? What does this say about our work, the work that we do? Not all of us are farmers anymore, but the work that we do is still in line with this mandate to subdue, to work the ground, so to speak. So there's a lot here to talk about. I hope you have a really, really rich conversation and a good time with your group. Let me know if you have any questions. Even tonight, we can talk a little bit more about this. All right, we'll see you.